The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Open Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN, get a 50% bonus to $1,000. We're also brought by Edge Boost, a reminder that they can help you earn up to $750 per month in your sports gambling transactions. Go to edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also brought by Rhythm, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Try it out for free for a week with the link sportsgaming.com/RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast from the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday night, February 1st, roughly 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again, going solo for this pod. Time to get into the final episode of Montpellier. Time to get into the final between Kovacevic and Felix. We're going to get into that breakdown in a second. For that, though, I do want to recap what happened last episode, both for the picks and for the actual matches that took place on Saturday. Starting off with the actual lock and dog picks, overall decent. We went the niche prop market on DraftKings, ended up taking the first 4 games score in the first set, ended up splitting those. For the lock, ended up having the first 4 games 2-2 at minus 130 in the Kovacevic and Rublev match. Did not work out as Kovacevic got the break immediately, and he led 3-1 after 4 games, so picked up a loss there. For the dog, though, nice win, as we ended up having De Jong and Felix first 4 games 2-2 at plus 110. Once again, plus 110 was kind of a rogue line. It's why we took this pretty obscure prop. DraftKings had just great prices for this actual market. The Rublev one that lost was minus 190 on some spots. I found 130 on DraftKings. And De Jong Felix first 4 games was like minus 130, minus 140. I found plus 110. So either way, I picked up a push, or basically a split for the actual lock and dog picks. For the matches, though, overall pretty, I'd say, interesting. They were 2 matches that were competitive, but straight set victories for one favorite, one dog. So Felix got the job done as he ended up making it into the second final of 2025, as he was able to beat De Jong in straight sets. Once again, not easy, as he ended up winning 6-4, 7-6. Should have been a lot easier, because Felix ended up having a bunch of break points. So Felix got broken at one point in that matchup, but Felix did go 2 for 13 on breakpoint chances, so he had, I'd say, a decent amount of openings. He just couldn't convert on most of them, but Felix did win 20% more on the second serve, which is why he ended up winning the match, as De Jong only won 38% of his second serve points. But De Jong overall had a great event, first ever tour semifinal. He looked sharp, but Felix was just too good on indoor hard court and got the job done there in straight sets. For the other matchup, you had a very fun one between Kovacevic and Rublev, where the first set was pretty chaotic because Kovacevic was up a break early, Rublev broke back, and then eventually Kovacevic broke again to eventually win the first set 7-5. Then eventually he did break to win the match 6-4 in the second set. So either way, point is, great job by Kovacevic, who we thought would be once again alive to some degree against Rublev. We thought Rublev would win, but we did think Kovacevic would make it interesting. We know Rublev has been a head case for at least a year plus. I mean, you could argue for his entire career, but it's definitely been ramped up a little bit over the last year or so with the, I'd say, lackluster results, including all of the mental breakdowns he's had on court. Overall, it just seemed like Kovacevic was extremely comfortable in most of the matchup, because it just seemed like in the baseline, I'd say, battles, the one-handed backhand was really sharp. It just seemed like Rublev, despite all the firepower he has, was not really able to bully Kovacevic around the court like we thought he might. And it just seemed like Kovacevic was very confident, he was very aggressive and calculated, and he was able to eventually get the job done there in straight sets. So overall, a great run by the qualifier. You might remember I've roasted Kovacevic before years ago because of his inconsistency and how he had a lot of talent in general, but was just never able to get the mental aspect of it right. And it seems like he's figured it out. I mean, a tour final speaks for itself, and the fact is he's won 11 of his last 12 matches. So he's been great, really no way around it. But either way, he was able to make it out of qualifying into the main draw and only dropped 1 set in 4 matches in the main draw. Coincidentally, the first match to Goffin. He's won 6 straight sets. He's won 7 straight sets in the event. So overall, good for Kovacevic, who's been very solid. Should be a very fun final between 2 guys with a bunch of firepower. Felix, we know, has the better serve in general. Kovacevic, though, has been serving well, and it should be a fun matchup. We're going to preview in a second. Before we get into the actual preview of that match, though, do want to remind you once again that you can show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So once again, the podcast is available edited by me as well on Spotify or Apple. So if you want to hear the show theme song, etc., you can do so. But if you are checking out audio only, you can leave a rating and a review. Or, once again, if you're new to the show on YouTube, first of all, hi, welcome to the podcast. Hopefully you enjoy the content. And either way, you can show support by leaving a like on the video. And don't forget to subscribe to the actual channel. I think we're pushing to around 750 right now for subscribers, trying to get to 800 by the end of February. So hopefully you can help us get there by hitting that subscribe button. Also a reminder, for the actual network, we do have a great contest going on for the Super Bowl. We're running a free, once again, free is the key word though, Squares pool for the Super Bowl, $1,000, winner take all for the final score square. So if you don't know how squares work, once again, you just enter into the contest and you'll be given two random numbers. One number will be the last digit of the Chiefs score. The other number will be the last digit of the Eagles score. If the fourth quarter matches up with once again, the last digit for both your teams correctly, you win $1,000, and it's free to enter. It takes no skill at all. So if you don't know football, that's fine. You can still enter the contest for free for a chance to win $1K, no questions asked. And a reminder, in order to actually enter the contest, use the link sportscom.com/squares to sign up, sportscom.com/squares. We're also brought to you by DraftKings. A reminder that DraftKings is the place to bet on Super Bowl, the Super Bowl coming up between the Chiefs and the Eagles. Get in on the action. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports team partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to lifting the Lombardi Trophy. And a reminder, you have a chance to make a lot of money by betting on touchdowns at DraftKings Sportsbook. The number one place to bet touchdowns. New customers also have a great deal, that $5 to get $200 bonus instantly. A reminder, in order to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code SGP for the actual deal. Code SGP for new customers, get $200 bonus instantly when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Gambling problem? Call 1.
Yeah, we're also brought to you by Rhythm. A reminder that SGPN's proud partner Rhythm is a great place to help you try out your sports betting models. And a reminder, they can help you build models in seconds. If you're new to it, you can build a model, copy it from the leaderboard, or also let Rhythm build one for you. A reminder that they also have a lot of great options for NFL picks, NFL props, college basketball, and the NBA. Rhythm does have it all. And a reminder, you can try it out for free for a week by going to sportscom.com/rhythm, sportscom/RATHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened on Saturday. Time to move on into the Sunday final between Felix and Kovacevic. Now, for the actual matchup, once again, pretty much a really interesting comparison of paths. Felix was one of the favorites to win the event. A reminder that we do have action on the final already, because for the actual outright recap here, we ended up having Bublik at 12-1. We had Rublev at 350, but most importantly, we do have Felix at 440. So we already have action. We have a minus 400 favorite at a plus 440. Can't complain. If you ended up back in the outrights with me, you can hedge if you want to, but we already have action on Felix to win the match here on Sunday at plus 440. Anyway, for the actual path, a reminder, Felix was one of the favorites to win the event. He had a bye in the first round, and he has looked very, very good so far in the event. In fact, he has not dropped a single set yet. Now, on the other side, you have Kovacevic, who's been playing really well in challengers, but we were a bit skeptical of how he would look in qualifying, because not the easiest path in qualifying. When you have to go through Busta in qualifying, not exactly that easy, but he got the job done there as he ended up beating Busta in straight sets. Beat Goffin in 3, beat Bellucci in straight sets, Bublik, defending champion, in straight sets, and Rublev, a top 10 opponent, in straight sets. So he has taken a Cinderella run and just run with it, because he has been on fire, won 7 straight sets. As for Felix, though, ended up beating Kaza after the bye, beat Bu, and ended up beating De Jong. He has not dropped a single set in the entire event. In fact, if you want to actually kind of manipulate data, because he did lose in the second round of the Aussie Open, he did win the first 2 sets in that match. So if you want to actually break down every match in the format of 2 out of 3, he's actually undefeated so far this year, if you want to do it that way. If you want to ignore the Aussie Open entirely, he is 7-0 so far this year in 2 out of 3 set matches. So Felix is starting to find his groove again. It's good to see. I know we've roasted him on the show many times before because the talent is undeniable. The issue is the consistency, and I'd say the overall mental lapses in his game. But he's been great. So you have two guys that have been really just dominant in the main draw, dropping 1 set combined between these two guys. So based on the actual numbers, should be a fun matchup. Now, Felix is around minus 300, minus 400. I saw 400 offshore. I know I see minus 300 now, though, on DraftKings. So money does seem to be coming in on Kovacevic. Kovacevic, though, is plus 230. For the over-under, 22.5 games. The over is minus 110. The under is minus 120. For the game spread, you have minus 3.5 for Felix. You have plus 3.5 for Kovacevic. Now, randomly, this is actually not the first ever meeting. They faced off back in 2024 in the middle of the year, faced off in Cincinnati, and Felix absolutely curb stomped him. 1-6-3, 6-1. Now, Kovacevic was in really bad form for, I'd say, a decent portion of last year. He started to figure it out again, and I do think that even though it's on hardcore and even though Felix is still a player that's worthy of being a massive favorite, I kind of want to disregard that matchup in Cincinnati because Kovacevic had yet to really find his form, and it seems like now the player that he's playing like is a top 50 guy. Last year and every year prior, probably closer to the 150 range. So I do think that even though Felix was able to roll past Kovacevic in the previous meeting, I kind of want to take it with a grain of salt because Kovacevic has been drastically improved, and he's proven it so far on the courts here in Montpellier. Now, for the actual matchup, once again, it's tough to find value on Felix in general because he's minus 300. The only argument would be in his favor for either straight sets or for the game spread, minus 3.5 here. Straight sets, though, for Felix is available at around minus 110. So basically, same odds as Kovacevic to win a set in this one. Now, I do think Kovacevic can make life difficult for Felix. Felix has had some breakpoint chances. The issue is his conversion rate is not great. Said before, Felix was 2 for 13 on breakpoint chances against De Jong in the match on Saturday. So he has chances. The question is, can he actually get over the finish line without making it, I'd say, more dramatic or more stressful than it needs to be? Probably not, because that's what Felix does. He did the same thing against Kaza earlier in the event where he was up a break in the second, then ended up falling behind in the breaker after blowing the break back. So Felix, I think, will make it a mess at times. He always does. Kovacevic, though, seems to be unfazed by the overall pressure. Once again, one of his first ever ATP semis. I think it was his second ever ATP semi. And he has Rublev against him on indoor hard court and says, you know what? I'm not just going to beat you. I'm going to beat you in straight sets. I think the confidence is definitely there. I think that Kovacevic has the game to make it difficult for Felix. I agree with Tennis Boys here, who does say that AK has to keep being aggressive on the backhand. I agree. I think that if he tries to get into a neutral, I'd say, baseline rally game with Felix, that is not going to go well for him because Felix has a lot of length. He has a lot of firepower on the forehand. The backhand can be a bit iffy at times, but I do think that Felix, with his overall firepower, can once again take advantage of Kovacevic in the longer rallies. I think that he's going to have to be aggressive. I think that Kovacevic found a nice, I'd say, combo against Rublev. I'd say mixing in the neutral balls with the overall potential winners. And I do think that Kovacevic has been good enough at coming to the net. He's a pretty good drive volleyer as well. I can see Kovacevic coming to the net a decent amount in this match, trying to limit the length of rallies and trying to get on the offensive early and often. But if you're looking at the actual matchup for Felix and Kovacevic, on one hand, you could argue that it's going to be a pressure-filled match for Kovacevic, biggest match of his career. On the other hand, when you're a qualifier who nobody gave you a chance to actually make it this far, you're playing with house money because most people think Felix is going to win. It's why he's minus 300, minus 400. I can see a pretty carefree approach here from Kovacevic, who is playing with house money, beat Rublev in the semi. He's proven to himself, if anything, that he can beat these top-tier guys, and I do think he'll go down swinging in this matchup. Felix, though, you can argue if things end up getting dicey, maybe it has a reverse effect on Felix, where he starts thinking, why am I in a war with a guy that's basically a qualifier? Why am I in a war with a guy ranked in the hundreds? Maybe I am going to have a moment here of a mental lapse, and I think that Kovacevic can capitalize on that. So for this one, I think that Felix is going to win. I think he's too good in indoor hard courts, and I do think that Felix is the better server out of the two guys. I see a pretty, I'd say, solid collection of routine holds for Felix throughout the course of the matchup. Kovacevic might have to battle a couple break points, but I do think that Felix should find some openings, enough openings to eventually win. But I don't see any value on Felix once again. So I am going to go with the over in this one, and I do think that there's some value on maybe the spread with Kovacevic here at 3.5. But I am going to go with the over. I think that 22.5 games does feel a bit low for what could be a potential marathon match or even a straight set match that does go distance. For example, the Rublev match, with the exception of the last game that Rublev ended up getting broken in, was a pretty, I'd say once again, marathon trajectory. I'm trying to think how to phrase this. It was headed towards a marathon potential as it was looking at what could have been a potential 7-5, 7-6, something like that. But Felix has had a couple matches in the event where he has had to get to 23 despite winning in straight sets. So based on that, I think the over is a solid play. I don't mind the game spread here for Kovacevic either, but I do think you're looking at what should be a pretty fun match between two guys with a lot of firepower, and I do think you're looking at a spot that should result in a lot of entertainment. I see a question here from Esco, why I don't cover women's tennis. The answer is I know a lot more about men's tennis than women's tennis. So I follow WTA somewhat. I follow men's tennis a lot more. If I really wanted to force it, I could do a women's tennis episode more frequently. But to be honest, I would feel like I'd be doing some of you a disservice because I do believe I know a lot about men's tennis, arguably more than anybody else that gives out picks on the internet. But I do think women's tennis is kind of, I don't want to say a weakness or a lack of knowledge for me, but I do think I know a lot more about men's tennis than women's tennis, and I feel like the quality of episode would be a lot better for men's than women's. So I don't force it. I will do women's episodes for Grand Slams. I do the first round with the, of course, outrights, and I do the quarterfinals onward. Before WTA, to answer your question, it's because I follow men's tennis a lot more than women's. So I don't want to, once again, force episodes with, I'd say, average knowledge. I feel like that's a waste to all of you, especially when your money's at stake. So instead of forcing episodes, I try to focus on what I know, which is men's tennis, and that's why we do men's pretty much only for the course of the season. But for Grand Slams, I make exceptions. Of course, when you have quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, we're going to break down the Grand Slam key matches there for women's. But either way, we're mostly going to cover men's on this show. Anyway, time to get into the actual lock and dog picks for the episode. But for that, though, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Edge Boost, our newest sponsor. SGPN is partnered up with Edge Boost, the premier Visa debit card for bettors. The Edge Boost card allows you to avoid the hassle of having your card denied at the sportsbook, DFS site, sweepstakes site, racetrack, and casino. A reminder, you can also earn up to $750 per month in cashback rewards with the Edge Boost card. You also know your money's safe as the card is FDIC insured. A reminder, the best part is that there's no credit checks and it's completely free. Sign up today. Use the promo code SGPN so you get automatic tier 2 status and better cashback rewards. That's edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN, edgeboost.bet, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Underdog. A reminder, the big game is coming up on a Sunday, not tomorrow, but a week from now. You get what I'm trying to say. Underdog does have you cover. The new customers also get a great new deal. They end up getting a Travis Kelce free pick if they sign up before the game. Plus, Underdog's site-wide and no-sweat entry token is now live. You can cash in on your Underdog entry or get bonus credit in return. And for the upcoming game, I am going to go Jalen Hurts higher, have a touchdown in that game. A reminder, though, when you do use your actual either a no sweat token or you end up using your Travis Kelce free pick. Reminder though, you could also use specials and boosts on our flex entries. And for your actual deal when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. Claim a special and first deposit offer up to 1K bonus cash on a fancy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished previewing the final between Felix and Kovacevic. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. So for the lock, I was initially going to do Kovacevic plus the games here at 3.5. However, I think I'm actually going to switch it at the last second. It's the same logic behind the two of them, but I think I am going to go with a different approach. Actually, no, do I want to do that? It's either Kovacevic plus the games or the over. That's kind of what I'm torn on here. But in reality, Kovacevic kind of has to cover it unless you end up getting 3 sets and it potentially gets lopsided at the end. You know what? I think I'll stick with what I had before. Give me Kovacevic plus the games here as my lock. I think it'll be a fun matchup. I think that, once again, if the match is going to end up going over 22.5. Kovacevic is probably going to cover. The only exception would be if he wins in straight sets handily, which I don't see happening. I think Felix is good enough as a server to force a breaker, and I think you're looking at what should be a fun matchup. Now, Felix, though, said before, has not dropped a set in all 3 matches here. However, 2 of those matches have featured a 6-4, 7-6, which means Felix has actually not covered the 3.5 game spread in 2 out of the 3 matches here, despite not dropping a set. So I think that Felix can once again win a competitive straight set battle, which would result in Kovacevic covering this number. In theory, Kovacevic could win outright, which definitely gives you a very good chance of winning. Kovacevic, though, has been in great form. He's won 12 of his last 13. Beat Bublik, defending champion. Yes, Bublik's a head case. I know it. Point is, though, he beat defending champion and a top 10 guy in back-to-back matches. I think Kovacevic's confidence at an all-time high. And Felix, you can argue, really hasn't played many great opponents in the event. Kaza, who I know can be tricky on hard court, but still not exactly a steady ATP player, more of a challenger guy. Beat him in the first matchup, beat Bu, kind of the same story as Kaza, and he ended up beating De Jong, who was a Cinderella story, ranked 131 in the semis. So if you're actually doing the math at home, that means that the best player in terms of ranking that Felix ended up beating in the event is Bu at number 71. Making the final, Felix faced 2 guys ranked in the 100 range. So I do think that Felix had a pretty easy path here, while Kovacevic had to beat Busta in qualifying. That's not easy. Ended up having to beat the likes of Bublik, defending champion, and beating Rublev in straight sets. I think Kovacevic just faced off against harder competition. So I do think that Felix, just by winning every set here, has once again been vulnerable at times. I think that Kovacevic can find some openings, and I think that's why I am going to go with the spread as opposed to the over. Give me Kovacevic plus 3.5 games as my lock at minus 106. That's available on FanDuel as the best price. For the dog, though, I am going to go back to a niche prop. I am going to go with the tiebreak market. I'm going to go with the over half a tiebreak in the match at even money on Bet Rivers. Now, there's been a tiebreak in 3 of Felix's last 4 matches. Had a breaker against De Jong, had a breaker against Kaza as well. So he has had a couple breakers in this event. There's been a tiebreaker in 3 of Kovacevic's last 6 matches. The Rublev match had a 7-5 in the first set, which was once again on the cusp of a breaker. Point is, though, you've seen a lot of breakers in Montpellier. Courts play fast, tough to break. I think that a breaker between 2 good servers is somewhat likely, and I think that even money's a good price for it. But you're looking at Kovacevic, who has been, I'd say, the surprising, person in this event making it to the final. He's only been broken 1 time in the last 3 matches combined. So when you factor that in, I think that you're looking at what should feature a match with a bunch of holds. I see Felix holding pretty easily because, of course, he's a great server, especially on hardcourt indoor. Kovacevic, though, has been serving well. Felix has not really capitalized on many breakpoint chances, and I do think that you might end up seeing a bunch of holds for, once again, 12 straight games resulting in a breaker. But I think you're looking at the tiebreak price here at even money being a pretty good number for 2 guys that have been serving well and 2 guys that have seen some breakers in the event. Once again, 3 out of 4 for Felix in that's also including the Australian Open, but 2 of the 3 matches here have had a breaker for him, and 3 of 6, including qualifying, have had a breaker for Kovacevic. I think that even money is a good price. I'll take that as my dog. So once again, the plays here for the final in Montpellier. The lock's going to be on Kovacevic plus the 3.5 at minus 106. For the dog, I am going to go with the tiebreak prop. Give me a tiebreaker in the match at even money. That's available on Bet Rivers. And a reminder back once again for the preview of 2 pretty important events coming up on hard court. We have Dallas and Rotterdam starting on Monday. So we're going to preview the events on Sunday. So we're going to be back tomorrow to break down both events in one episode. Check out the comment section, though, before I officially wrap up the show. I see, once again, people just, I guess, agreeing with me that I shouldn't be forcing women's picks if I don't feel confident in it. So thank you, Belichick. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Either way, point is, I suppose a lock. He wasn't losing a set. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at a spot where I think it's going to be a fun matchup in general. Felix has been really good on hard court. I get it, but I think Kovacevic is pretty dangerous, and I think that Felix hasn't really played anybody worth a damn so far in the event. So I'm going to factor that in too. Either way, though, I'm back once again tomorrow for the preview of those 2 events. And until next time, a reminder, you can also show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.